What are the most urbanist cities in North America? The places you might gravitate to if you enjoy dense, lively, mixed-use neighborhoods and not being required to drive. Subjective impressions are easy, but building an objective ranking based on factors like density and transportation patterns is harder. One option is to compare major core cities that anchor different metropolitan areas. The city of New York versus the cities of Los Angeles, Toronto, Chicago, Houston, and so on, using metrics like population density. That's a start, but these boundaries can be arbitrary and hard to compare. The city of Toronto was amalgamated with some of its suburbs in the 90s, cutting its density in half. Other cities like Los Angeles or Houston have borders that are just plain weird, entirely for political and historical reasons. A second option here is to compare metropolitan areas, like Greater Los Angeles versus Greater Toronto. This fixes the comparison problem, but it has the downside of including an enormous amount of suburban and even rural land that we're probably not as interested in.
In this video, we're going to score the top 10 urbanist cities in the US and Canada using a different method that we think lines up better with how people actually experience their city, which is at the neighborhood level. Our urbanist city ranking is based on how much of each city meets two criteria: having a population density above 4,000 people per square kilometer, and having more than 40% of commuters get to work by walking, cycling, and public transit.
This is the Seattle metropolitan area. If you cut it down to only the census tracts that meet our two criteria, we get this 31 square kilometer or 12 square mile section of the city. It might not look like a lot, but it's enough to put Seattle at number 10 on our list of North America's most urbanist cities. The most urbanist parts of Seattle are near downtown, extending to the east and the north. A second cluster extends west from the University of Washington. And finally, there's one lone census tract over in Bellevue, with more than 4,000 people per square kilometer, and more than 40% of people getting to work by walking, cycling, or transit.
Leaving Washington State, number 9 on our list is the other Washington. With 64 square kilometers or 25 square miles of the city meeting our two criteria, Washington, D.C. has double the amount of urbanist area as Seattle. Much of D.C. itself qualifies, and there are also clusters in Silver Spring, downtown Bethesda, Arlington, Crystal City, and Alexandria. Washington shows us a pattern we're going to see in a few U.S. cities. Impressively long metro or rapid transit networks that cover way more ground than anything we currently have in Canada, but which don't really follow up with the combination of density and ridership around stations that you might expect. Maybe because part of the impressive coverage comes from following highways.
At number 8, we have Vancouver, which just barely ekes out DC. Downtown and the West End meet our criteria, obviously, plus neighborhoods just outside of downtown like Kitsilano. There's also a chain of neighborhoods following the very successful SkyTrain, deep into Vancouver's suburbs, through Burnaby, New Westminster, and even to Surrey. Transit is the most common non-car way to commute in most cities, especially bigger ones, although by focusing on commuting, we're ignoring lots of other shorter trips that people make. If the census had data on other kinds of trips too, we'd probably see more walking and cycling.
The 7th ranked urbanist city on our list is Boston, which has 75 square kilometers or 29 square miles of urbanist neighborhoods based on our criteria, covering much of the city of Boston, but also Cambridge and Somerville. We visited Boston a few years ago and really enjoyed it. It's a shame it doesn't get as much attention on urbanist YouTube as other strong cities like Toronto or Philadelphia. Boston feels like a sister city to Montreal in some ways, with 15% Halifax mixed in for good measure.
Number 6 on our list is Philadelphia, another big, dense, historic city on the east coast of the US. Philadelphia's more urbanist neighborhoods, according to our criteria, really consistently cover the central city, radiating out from downtown to the south and especially the north and the west, past the University of Pennsylvania to the very famous neighborhood of West Philadelphia. When interpreting all of these maps, keep in mind that our cutoffs were arbitrary. Why choose 40% non-car commuting instead of 30 or 50%? It just seemed reasonable. Places just outside of the boxes usually aren't massively different from places just inside, but we had to choose a number.
Our 5th most urbanist city is San Francisco, which is basically tied with Philadelphia. Much of the city of San Francisco is covered, reaching past the Twin Peaks into Richmond and Sunset along the streetcar lines. There's also a big cluster across the bay covering Oakland up to Berkeley, and one single census tract in downtown Palo Alto. San Francisco is another region like DC whose rapid transit system has really impressive coverage without doing the best job of following up with density and ridership at stations. In choosing our cutoffs, we decided to be more stringent on commuting than density, meaning that more neighborhoods across the US and Canada were excluded because of too much car commuting than too low density. Our philosophy on density is that it should be legal to build for housing affordability reasons. Yes, this means you, San Francisco, but not all cities have the same level of housing demand, and high densities aren't strictly necessary for good urbanism.
The fourth most urbanist city in North America is Montreal. This one is a big jump above San Francisco to 111 square kilometers, or 43 square miles of urbanist neighborhoods, covering the entire central city around the mountain, southwest to Verdun, east to Mercier, and north to the river and border with Laval. A few blocks downtown don't meet the cutoff, because there's enough office space that the residential density isn't very high, which arguably is a limitation of using population density. Montreal has better density and ridership around its metro, compared to a lot of US cities, but the metro also isn't as long, at least for now. The REM is coming soon.
In third place, we have Chicago, which is basically tied with Montreal, although the pattern of coverage is a little different. Montreal's more urbanist neighborhoods were more tightly clustered in a big blob, while Chicago's extend further out but are less consistent, especially to the west and south of downtown. It seems like Chicago has more industrial areas in the central city breaking up neighborhoods, but it also has less consistent density and ridership around rapid transit. It's not the worst on this list by any means, but it's still wild seeing so many vacant lots near rapid transit. Obviously, that's a different problem from San Francisco's self-imposed housing shortage.
The second most urbanist city on our list is Chicago's sister city of Toronto, which provides another big jump to 162 square kilometers, or 63 square miles, of neighborhoods meeting our density and commuting criteria. The big important lines in the subway, Line 1 and Line 2, are pretty well covered as you'd expect. But what also stands out is the density and lack of car commuting around the much shorter Line 4 Shepherd subway. Reese Martin recently made a video on the potential of this line, which you should check out if you haven't seen it. There's also exactly one census tract outside of the city of Toronto, near Cooksville GO Station in Mississauga. The big roads and parking lots don't look pretty or feel particularly urbanist, but the numbers don't lie. Building good transit in the suburbs and putting dense housing nearby really can encourage transportation patterns that are very different from a typical car-centric suburb. Before we get to the number 1 most urbanist city in North America, let's take a look at the runners-up. Starting with number 20, we have Calgary, then Winnipeg, Minneapolis, Pittsburgh, Portland, Victoria, Quebec City, Baltimore, Los Angeles, and finally Ottawa. Any surprises? Let us know in the comments.
The number 1 most urbanist city in North America? By a wide margin, you guessed it, it's New York. With almost 500 square kilometers or 200 square miles meeting our urbanism criteria, New York beats out Toronto, Chicago, Montreal, and San Francisco combined. New York's more urbanist areas cover most of Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens, parts of Staten Island, much of New Jersey along the Hudson River from Jersey City upwards, and then inland to Newark too. With New York on top, you might ask whether our formula advantages larger cities, and the answer is yes. Our ranking was designed to answer one question. If you want to live or spend time in a denser, less car-dependent neighborhood, in what cities do you have the most options? We approached the question like that because however you define them, urbanist neighborhoods are relatively rare in North America. You don't necessarily need the sheer quantity of options provided by New York, but at the same time, living in a city with just a few denser mixed-use areas can be frustrating and limiting.
The analysis we used for this city ranking was pretty simple, being based on just 2 things: population density and how people get to work. There are dozens more factors that go into an urbanist city that would have been nice to include if we had the data, from pedestrian safety, noise, pollution, and the density of grocery stores. But despite the simplicity, we think the results actually worked out pretty well, especially the overall ranking of cities, which basically lines up with what we'd expect. The maps of more urbanist areas within each city should definitely not be taken as exact, though. Our cutoffs were arbitrary. Commuting data ignores other types of trips. Commuting data is noisy at the level of the census tract. And we decided to use pre-COVID numbers, so some patterns might be out of date. Still, at least for the cities we've lived in or visited, this method did a pretty good job of identifying what we'd call the main concentrations of urbanism. We've had this video in the pipeline for a while, but we were inspired to finish it after seeing City Nerd's recent tier list of North American cities. There really is no correct answer for this kind of thing, but we wanted to present a different way of looking at the question, more by neighborhood, that we think is interesting. If you haven't seen his video, check it out and let us know how you think the results compare.
Thanks for watching through to the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and a special thanks to our supporters on Patreon.